Welcome back to this GS750 Restoration project. This is episode 16. We're certainly getting towards the end of the project. Having said that, once we get the bike all back together with everything back on it, there may be some issues crop up trying to get it to run correctly, but fingers crossed that should be minimal. In this episode, we'll try and resolve some issues that cropped up with the petrol tank. It's the paint on there, which I painted months and months ago. After pulling it out of storage, there was some bubbles and things, so didn't really want to respray the whole tank, so we'll try and fix those. And then also we get a delivery of one of the major components that we're waiting on, so that takes us a little bit closer to the final product. So stay tuned. If you're liking this series, certainly click on like or even subscribe, or let your mates know. If they've got old GS Suzuki motorbikes, there's hopefully some good information in here. Anyway, let's get on with it. Now, one of the last issues I have to deal with is a few issues on the tank. I was very happy with how this turned out. This was painted months and months ago, and it's just been sitting in the shed. But after a few months I noticed that there were a few bubbles popping up around here, which I'm not quite sure why that happened, because this was stripped completely back to bare metal. It was edge primed, it was primed and then painted. So I'm not quite sure what's caused that, but you know, you can see that's probably the worst one. All up around here, I mean, a lot of that will be covered by that the petrol flap that goes over the top there. I definitely don't want to respray the whole tank, especially since I don't know what caused it in the first place. So my plan is to, using a syringe that I have, inject some super glue underneath that bubble and then press it down, and hopefully that will keep it in place. And then maybe put a little bit of clear touch up over the top before I buff the whole tank. So fingers crossed that gives me a reasonable finish. So anyway, fingers crossed, let's go. So I injected super glue into that large bubble. Where I injected it, it ended up sort of drying and coming up to a point, so I've lost some paint there. There was a couple of other tiny little bubbles that I had sort of cut a little hole in to let the air out earlier on, and they sort of ended up a bit of a point where you could see the split. So I basically just used my Dremel just to take that surface off. And what I'm planning on doing is getting my blue paint, touching that up in there, giving it a sand, and then a very small bit of 2-pack clear over the top, and see how that looks with the blue base colour. So I'll wait till that dries completely and then give it a wet and dry sand, and then some clear over the top. But yeah, pretty happy so far. So I wasn't really happy with the putting the paint blobs in the in those areas that needed touch up. Basically, once I sanded it, even though it was his original paint, you could still see it quite clearly. So I decided to put another couple of coats of blue over the top of everything. So I masked off the stripes at the bottom there. I did get some biting around those areas where the reducer sort of reacts to the underlying coats and sort of crinkles up. So had to sand it back again, and then so apparently the way you deal with that is just do some very, very light coats and very slowly build up the layers. So it's now looking pretty good, and it's all sanded back, and I'm going to put redo the clear over the top, so hopefully it should turn out okay. So I've now redone the clear over the top of those repairs, and as you can see, for example, up here there was a big bubble. It's virtually invisible now. There was another little bubble and a crack here. There was a few cracks along there, so It looks okay at the moment, so hopefully in a few months' time it doesn't do the same thing again. But anyway, it's looking good so far. Now, one of the things that was missing off this was there's this little helmet clip here which has a little bit of spring steel that goes on that little screw hole, and theoretically you open the seat, put your helmet D-ring through there, and then close the seat, and that protects your helmet. Now, I did manage to find that little spring online, but it was like $30 or $40 or something, so I don't intend to use it, but so I just got a bit of galvanized sheet and cut it up and shaped it based on some photos I found online, and that'll do me. Cost me about half an hour's work. And there it is installed, looking pretty much like the original. So one of the last things to do on this full restoration is the seat. On initial looking at the seat, it looked in pretty good condition, but it's a classic design flaw in these old seats is that the base pan is metal, and so as soon as you get any sort of hole in the top vinyl, it lets water in, it sits inside the foam, and then just slowly rusts out the base. So as you can see, there was a hole in the covering of this, so remove that. The actual foam inside is in pretty good condition, but then when we get to the actual seat pan itself, it's pretty badly rusted. I mean, it could be repaired, but that would take a lot of work. So I did find one online, a company online that does replacement pans in Vietnam, of all places, so I've ordered one of those. Also, one of the first things I ever bought was the replacement cover, so once we have the seat pan and use the existing foam, we'll put this seat cover over the top, which should make it look pretty new. Now, this parcel arrived at the front door just a few minutes ago, and by the looks of it, it's the replacement seat pan for the bike. So let's open this up and see what's inside. Fingers crossed it is the right part. Get into this. Come all the way from Vietnam, which is pretty amazing. I'm sure if we didn't have the internet, I'm not sure how you would ever do any of these major restorations. Finding parts is impossible without the World Wide Web. Very well packed, which is good news. It's heavy. Okay, that's obviously been panel beaded by hand. A bit rough here and there, but good job really. Has all the fittings for the hinges and latch, etc. It's already got the rubbers. So if we compare that to the original one, there's the difference. So that should make a great base for the seat. So I just have to do a bit of upholstery, which I have a little bit of experience on, having done one on my Katana. So yeah, looking great. So that's one more thing to cross off the list. All we're waiting for now is the exhaust system. So I have checked that the hinges and the latch on this replacement seat pan fit nicely. I've then put the foam back on, which was actually in pretty good condition, and then this replacement cover, which I bought many months ago, which seems to fit on quite nicely. So the idea is to use these bulldog clips to hold it in place, make sure it's all nice and centered, and then you pull the vinyl down and it hooks onto these little triangular clips here, which is the way the original seat did it. So I'm just sitting it out in the sun to let it warm up so it's nice and stretchy, and we'll see how we go. So there is the finished product. Pretty happy with that. Just got to sort out underneath. The corners were a bit tricky with the piping, so just got to figure out how to keep that piping in place, and then sort of hammer down those little tangs to hold it in place. But I think it looks pretty good. And here is the seat reupholstered and back on the bike with the new seat pan and the new cover. So looking quite good. The gaps aren't too bad. I've tested it with the petrol tank and fits okay. The latch works, so yeah, very happy with that. So that's it for episode 16. Tank's looking much better, and the seat is now reupholstered. So I think I mentioned in a previous episode that the main silencers for the exhaust are hopefully on their way from Italy. The factory reopened a few weeks ago, so hopefully I'll see them soon, and then there's only a few more things to get done before we at least get it running, and then maybe send it off to an engineer to get it inspected, all that sort of stuff. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, certainly click on the like or even subscribe so you find out when new episodes go up. There's also some blues music on my channel if you're interested in that. So see you in episode 17.